Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Politically Animated, where we break down the absolute clown show of modern politics. And today's main event, a nationwide liberal meltdown over Trump and the NCAA finally saying, hey, maybe biological men shouldn't be competing in women's sports. Who would have thought? Bruh, I swear some of these folks protest harder than they work. Meanwhile, every female athlete who's been robbed of a scholarship is like, finally, I can actually win a race again.
From now on, women's sports will be only for women.
This is part of a whole program to essentially erase transgender Americans from American life. And yes, just to note, transgender Americans are just that. We're Americans.
Under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes.
Today is another example, at the highest level in seat and position and power in the world, watching the new president of the United States articulate complete, utter nonsense and doing complete harm to the most vulnerable communities in his own society within the boundaries of the United States, which will have generational harm long term.
For a lot of trans youth out there, it just means, once again, their country's declaring war on them. And this is going to affect people's mental health. I'll admit it's affected mine, and I'm 53 years old.
Well, President Trump signed an executive order today barring biological males from competing in women's sports as transgender athletes. As Mike Emanuel reports, the order reverses a Biden administration interpretation of Title IX, which favored transgender rights.
Great going, everybody.
President Trump signing an executive order banning transgender athletes from participating in women's and girls' school sports.
And we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women.
Wednesday's order redefines Title IX, the civil rights law outlawing sex discrimination in federally funded educational programs.
For some reason, people think that trans women and intersex people have an advantage in sport, when in actual fact there is no evidence for that.
Mr. Trump's latest move landing on National Girls and Women in Sports Day.
Most Americans are with us in saying that women's sports should be reserved for women, biological women.
But some advocates wonder why the spotlight is on a population that is so rare.
Why is this an issue of such concern when the group being targeted is so disappearingly small?
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president hopes the U.S. Olympic Committee and the NCAA will follow his lead and not allow transgender athletes to compete in women's competitions. In Washington, D.C., Mike Emanuel, Fox 13 News.
All right, so here's what happened. Trump and the NCAA laid down the law. No more trans women competing against biological females. And guess what? The usual suspects lost their minds. MSNBC host, this is a devastating day for progress. Oh yes, totally devastating. Meanwhile, in the real world, women's sports just became competitive again. And let's be real, even some liberals are side-eyeing this nonsense. Like, I saw a dude at Starbucks today look up from his soy latte and say, wait a minute, maybe this doesn't make sense.
Can you describe just briefly, like firsthand, what that experience is like to have that fear in locker rooms, or even just the frustration in the pool, for someone who maybe hasn't actually experienced it and can only really imagine what that's like?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers, and I think that what a lot of people, and at least what I was told before I had publicly shared my story, was a lot of people could understand the sports competition. I think the visual, and there's a video that's circulated, millions of times at this point, of Leah Thomas winning the NCAA championship. And by the way, the girls that he beat are Olympic medalists. They've medaled in the Olympics. And, he beats them by body lengths in this race. It's very obvious that he's a male body, and he's 6'4" tall. I mean, he's not a small person. And I think that part is pretty clear to people, and people can see the differences between male and female on the athletic field. But what people don't see behind closed doors is what happens in the locker rooms and what happens in bathrooms. And so my teammates and I were undressing in the locker room 18 times every single week with this 6'4" tall male athlete. And the best way to explain it was you automatically knew you were uncomfortable. I mean, there would be times I wasn't listening to anyone talking. I wasn't trying to talk to anyone. I was just at my locker changing, and I would hear a male voice and my instincts would kick in. And I would say, oh my gosh, somebody's here that's not supposed to be here. And then I would have to jump myself back to reality and say, no, actually, we've invited this male individual to be in our space and he's supposed to be here. And so that was part of my experience. And I think a lot of people, when they first started hearing about this issue, didn't really understand that. And so it really is the two parts, because of course the sports aspect is incredibly unfair, but also the aspect of having males in female private spaces. And it's become a huge issue. I mean, we've now over the past couple of years heard stories coming out of prisons, out of women's shelters, out of high school bathrooms. I mean, you name it. So this issue again is so much deeper than just unfairness in sports.
And what did the president's executive order mean to you personally, especially having been at the White House yesterday?
Yeah, it was a great win, but honestly, the best way to describe it is a little bit bittersweet, because I think that the point that we even have to do this is kind of wild to me. I mean, I don't know if other people feel the same way. It's just like, wow, we actually have to have a sitting president sign a piece of paper that says, hey, yeah, men should not compete in women's sports. So it is a huge win. It was a really wonderful experience. I think my favorite part of the day was the fact that there were so many young girls that were there. And they were the ones that we sent to, touch the shoulder of the president while he was signing. I mean, the girls were that close to him. And I think they are why we do what we do. They are why we fought. And I think that to me was the most meaningful part. And again, yes, it was a wonderful day, but there is some aspect of, hey, it's kind of a little bit funny that we even have to do this.
Look, at the end of the day, we're not saying trans athletes can't compete at all. Just that they should compete fairly. But nah, activists are acting like this is Jim Crow too. Like bro, forcing women to lose to biological men was never progress. It was just another way to erase women in the name of inclusivity. Even Caitlyn Jenner thinks this is a bad idea. So what do y'all think? Are we finally back to common sense? Or is this just another round of liberal outrage Olympics? Let me know in the comments. And if you had a good laugh today, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.